How Donald Trump used social media to take over the world. In his first interview following the U.S. election, Donald Trump vowed to take a less outrageous approach to social media. "If I use it at all, I'm going to be very restrained," he told Leslie Stahl on CBS 60 Minutes. But over the following weeks, the president-elect's Twitter feed would prove to be anything but restrained. There was his attack on the cast of the Broadway musical Hamilton last week after it urged Vice President-elect Mike Pence to embrace diversity and champion minority groups. "The cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear is highly overrated, should immediately apologize to Mike Pence for their terrible behavior." There was his string of voting fraud allegations, in which he claimed he would have won the popular vote if you cancelled out the millions of people who voted illegally. "In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. Serious voter fraud in Virginia, New Hampshire and California, so why isn't the media reporting on this? Serious bias, big problem." Just earlier today, there was his suggestion that people who burn the American flag should be jailed or have their citizenship revoked. "Nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail." Evidently, restraint be damned, the president-elect's notorious social media presence isn't going anywhere. After all, it's one of his greatest weapons. What's with Donald Trump's Twitter feed? Every time Mr. Trump tweets something provocative, the reaction is instantaneous and predictable. Take his latest remark on suggesting jail time for those who burn the flag. The tweet went viral, appearing on the homepage of every major news outlet. He clocked up 60,000 retweets in 24 hours, not even including manual retweets, and generated a fresh buzz of heated discussion as his opponents slammed him and his supporters fired back. Mr. Trump now gets to sit back, occasionally refresh his notifications window with a contented sigh, and watch the free publicity roll in once again. It's every social media user's ambition to go viral at least once, and here's someone achieving that every time he hits the tweet button. Regardless of what you think of his actual posts, Mr. Trump has no doubt revolutionized the social media game for politicians. At the end of the day, all those bizarre yet shareable remarks about climate change and other famous people greatly boosted his profile and played a key part in his rise to the top job. Mr. Trump himself admitted this during the 60 Minutes interview. Describing social media as a great form of communication, he fully acknowledged his online influence. "I really believe that the fact that I have such power in terms of numbers with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., I think it helped me win all of these races where they are spending much more money than I spent," he said. "And I won. I think that social media has more power than the money they spent, and I think maybe to a certain extent, I proved that. Why spend millions of dollars on televised advertising and other costly conventional methods when you can directly communicate with millions of people online for nothing?" He knows the benefits of the buzz he can generate from a snarky or controversial tweet will far outweigh the retweets a journalist might get for digging it up to contradict his words 6 months later. It only adds to the long-made argument that Mr. Trump resonated with voters railing against the establishment. The catch-22 for the American media. As we speak, the American media is warring over whether Donald Trump's Twitter stream deserves a spotlight or not. On one side, there's the argument that Mr. Trump can and has effectively controlled the media through his tweets, redirecting attention to his stream whenever he wants something more important buried in the news cycle. In his widely shared piece "Stop Being Trump's Twitter Fool," Politico writer Jack Schafer argues journalists need to stop taking the bait every time Mr. Trump stirs the pot. He writes of how mass salivation flows on Twitter as soon as Mr. Trump expresses a controversial viewpoint, a move he deems deliberate and calculated. Haven't any of these people raised children? Don't they know about bait and switch? Have none of them been paying attention to Trump's Twitter strategy for the past 17 months, writes Schafer. For anybody who has read a half dozen of Trump's tweets, the pattern is obvious. He compiles these tweets precisely in order to elicit strident protest. He argues the public, reporters and Trump opponents alike should fight back by not taking the bait. What then should we do when Trump taunts with such tweets? First, think before you tweet. Know that Trump wants you to tweet back at him the first thing that comes to your offended brain. Pause for just a minute, and if you must comment, try something like, "Sorry, baby Donald," in not taking the bait. But others say it's not this simple. In the Washington Post, political reporter Aaron Blake argues that we can't and shouldn't ignore the president-elect's tweets. Blake denies Mr. Trump's administration has employed any grand plan to manipulate the media's focus. Blake argues journalists would be doing their readers a disservice by resisting the urge to cover his statements, saying they would essentially be giving the president-elect a pass on saying controversial things. It's ultimately a no-win situation for journalists, he says. If we don't cover the statements enough, we're abrogating our responsibility to be a check on the powerful and to promote the truth. If we cover them in depth and point out just how baseless Trump's conspiracy theory is, we're focusing too much on a distraction and giving Trump what he wants. At the end of the day, as journalists continue to grapple with this to report or not to report question, Mr. Trump is no doubt basking in what he sees as further proof his war on the mass media was successful.